All right, so for anyone who is creating content, there is a fundamental question that everyone needs to ask themselves in order to paint the road or at least pave the path for which direction you want to go with your content. And that question is quality or quantity. Which one matters more? Which one should you be focusing on? We're going to talk about that and answer that today. And the answer that I'm going to give you might actually surprise you from some of the advice that you see out there. So let's jump into this. I've been spending a ton of time and a ton of money in a ton of different courses and different coaching programs to learn about what others are saying out there about what they believe is the best route for creating content and getting results and being able to scale your brand. And it always boils down into these two camps. You have the camp of people who are super for quality, and you have the camp that are people that are super for quantity. And I don't think that there's a camp where one is against the other, right? Because both matter. The question just becomes how can you kind of pick one lane to stick in and focus on for your strategy instead of trying to do both? Because if you try to do both at the same time, I think what happens to most of us is that we get overwhelmed with trying to put so much time and effort into a video and trying to do it at volume. And the problem is that you get to a place where you're burnt out, you're overworked, and you're disappointed, or maybe you're frustrated with the results you're getting because you're trying to do both. So what I want to do is I want to go over some pros and cons for each of the cases, because I want you to kind of have a full 30,000 foot view of what each of these strategies look like and why both of them can be beneficial or can work against your strategy. So that you can, honestly, I want you to make a decision for yourself of what you want to do, but I'm going to guide your thoughts on how to think about this and which direction you should go in. And the reason we're even talking about this, and this might even be the first episode that we launch for Kings of Content, and you might be thinking wow, that's a weird first episode to do, right? But the reason why I think this is actually so important is because this actually, after being in so many different cohorts and groups and communities and studying this stuff, this is actually one of the biggest questions that's we don't say the terms, but it's what it continues to revolve around, because you have these different strategies and stuff. And for you, when you're starting out, unless you've been doing content for a while now, if you're just starting out, one of the big questions you have to decide is how much time am I going to give to this? How much work do I need to put into this? And what am I going to expect from the results that come from this effort, right? It's no different than investing in anything else. You want to know what your ROI is. We want to know how much we're spending and how much we're getting out. And so it's super important that we understand these principles, because this will dictate or determine how we think about our investment strategy and what we're going to get out of this. Okay, so let's start with the pros first for the case for quality. There's a quote by Abraham Lincoln that I love. It says, if you give me 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'm going to spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. And this is a beautiful quote because it's right in line with this idea of quality, that what we should be doing more than anything is focusing on the idea, on the execution, on the strategy, more than just hitting record and making a ton of content. You have that camp of people who are the spray and pray or throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And you have the people who are a lot more methodical and more strategic in their approach to come to a conclusion of this is what we're going to do. And then when they execute, it has a much higher chance of success. So the less you put out at the same time, the more time you can invest into the quality of each of your videos. So for example, if you were doing 7 videos a week and you were trying to do, a ton of different pieces of content, and you're kind of unique with what you're trying to do right now. So not every single piece can be batched together in the most, sequential order that is convenient for you and your schedule. If that was your strategy versus you just put out one piece of content a week, then all of the extra hours and time, and I guess let me preface that this is based on the assumption that whatever time in total you're willing to commit to content, then that time is just being displaced in different ways, right? It's not about, I can see the case for why you want to do less and less for social media to try and still get a high output, but it's just like investing, right? The less time you're spending, it's the less money you're putting into it, the less payout you're going to get in the end because of the compounding interest effect. And the same goes for social media, because it's not just about the content and what you're putting out, but it's about your reps in it. It's your experience with it. It's your, especially with what we do, which is more talking head type content or conversational content. it's the more reps you're getting with doing this style of stuff, right? Like, I don't think that the 60-second short form video content is going anywhere anytime soon. This is not Vine. It is not going to die. In fact, so many studies and so many professionals are predicting that this market is going to grow exponentially over the next decade. And so it's more important than ever for you to start getting some reps and understanding, oh, this is the messaging style, this is the rhythm, this is what I say, these are the hooks that I use. And over time, you just get really, really, really good at it because of the familiarity. And then eventually it becomes like working with knowing the back of your hand. And so that's why I think that the compounding effect of putting more time into like each of your video could be great, because the more time you're still spending on each of those videos, even though there's less volume, there's more time into each one, the better it's going to look. It's no different than if you were to paint 7 paintings a week versus 1 painting, and being able to put so much more attention into the detail of them. The next point that I would bring up, quality is scarce. So this is true because when you go on social media, there is so much content out there. Everyone is putting out something, they're blasting out content, they're trying to see what's going to hit, and it's diluting the ability or it's diluting the quality of the content that already exists out there. And so for a lot of people who are looking for legitimate help and legitimate guidance, it's really hard for them to find. And this doesn't always have to equate to the fact that the other people are just putting out other content like crazy and they're just blasting and spraying and praying. But it could also just come down to the fact that like other people don't know how to deliver quality, or you might be someone that's much more qualified in the space to talk about certain things. And so your expertise and your way of teaching is more high quality for the viewer than for someone else in that exact same space. And so quality is not just about the video production, but it's also about the quality of the material that you're talking about. And so spending more time on each video might allow you to put more focus into the details of the material and the nuances and the examples and the stories and that kind of stuff to make something happen. And when quality is scarce like that, people go looking for it. And when they find it, it stands out like a black sheep in the world of content. And immediately they can recognize and they can do their due diligence and research you. And as long as your landing page for your socials and your content is pretty consistent and they know what they're going to get, it is a no-brainer for them to hit that follow button. And so that's why if you can nail the quality side of things and show that you're different in the space, it's very easy to win people over to hit that follow button. People have been doing it now for 10 years. They know what they're getting into when they hit the follow button. And so it's no longer a question to people of, oh, I don't know, maybe I want to follow them, maybe I don't. It's a pretty instantaneous decision of like, oh, I'm totally following this person. This is exactly what I need. Or they're going to go on and move on and try and find other content that they believe is better. So remember, quality is scarce. All right, next point is it removes the burden of needing to make content every single day. So this is kind of a no-brainer, right? We still would be spending time on content, but instead of being in front of the camera, doing multiple takes, or even writing out tons of scripts, you are spending more of that time maybe in your sessions of brainstorming and strategizing and thinking that opens the box for you to think more about each of your ideas. But you're not living with this burden of like, I got to make something today, I got to post something today, I got to schedule, I got to put something out there, because that can become super overwhelming. Now, this is also, in all of this, this is assuming that you're doing all of this yourself. You don't have a team, you don't have someone else that's managing these things, you're doing this on your own. If we had a team that's in the picture, then some of these might not be as relevant for you, but it's still nonetheless is important to understand. All right, the next one is that one video that does 1 million views a week versus 7 videos that do 10,000 views. So I've seen this case before. There's a guy that makes content. He calls his stuff the part-time creator. And his whole thing is like, hey, you can just make one viral video on a Saturday afternoon and get 1 million views rather than spending hours and hours and hours through the week trying to make content that maybe gets 10,000 views each, which then in total is about 70,000 views versus one video that gets 1 million views. Now, the counter that I'm going to make to that just in this moment is that the difference is when you make a viral piece of content, of course, your audience is going to be much larger. You're trying to reach a more broader audience. And so the material, what you're teaching about might not be as niche down for who you are trying to reach. And it might go more viral, which is great. But those 10,000 views, that doesn't mean that those are bad views. That means that those are more qualified views if the content is more niche down for what you're trying to do. And again, reps. And we're going to talk about the pros for the quantity side as well in just a little bit. So don't sweat it. We're still making progress. All right, next up on this is the extra time that you would be making content, you could be spent learning to make the content better. So yes, we've already talked about this, the idea that you're not taking away that time and going and spending it doing other things and just kind of wasting the day or focusing on other tasks, which are great. But I would recommend that you just pick a certain amount of time every single week that you're willing to commit to for social content. And then that time is either dedicated to one video, or it's dedicated to 4 videos, or it's dedicated to 7 or to 14, or whatever you think that you can maximize with your time and efficiency and potential team and support in order to execute consistently on social content. All right, so those are going to be the pros for quality. Those are some of the big ones. And one big example that I want us to top off with that for you to just kind of think about Mr. Beast. So if you watch any content by Jimmy and what he does, and sometimes he does podcast episodes where he talks with other creators. I think he's been on Colin Samir a handful of times. So the material that he talks about on there is when he gives advice for other creators is just focus on making better content. Don't focus on the volume. Don't focus on trying to make more and more and more stuff. Just make good content. And it's one of those things that you hear and you're inspired. You're like, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to make better content. But then you start getting to the drawing board and you're like, what is better content? And now you're confused or frustrated, or you're just back to the drawing board again. And it's like, yeah, Jimmy, like you say make quality content, but I can also make the case that you've been doing this for like over 10 years now, 15 years. And so for you, you have the data and the quantity of the content in order to make some of those decisions about what quality is. But that is a really strong case where when you do know it, then it makes it really, really powerful for you to focus on one really great idea instead of a lot of smaller ideas. And the other thing about Jimmy that you have to understand from Mr. Beast is that all of his content that he does is long form content. So a lot of these people that I see this argument for quality over quantity, I honestly think that it has more to do with long form content than short form content. Because what happens is when you do short form content, the quality can be a lot more, I don't want to say like diluted in the sense that it lowers the quality of it, but the production grade level and how much time you have to spend on it and that kind of stuff. You can still make quality stuff in short form content. It's much easier than long form, because what happens is people just start spamming tons of content on long form content and they're not getting any hits because they're just spending too much time on too many different ideas instead of focusing down on the best idea. And my advice to you, and if that's the camp that you end up in, is every idea is a great idea in isolation until you compare it to others. So never just go and write down an idea and be like, dude, this is what we're going to do. This is the idea. Take that idea, write down another 10, 20, 30, 40, maybe even 50 other ideas before you come back to that main one that you loved, and then ask yourself, is this still the best idea that I've created from this entire category? Jimmy, I think he said before that he has 1,000 ideas for every one video that he does. And right now he's putting out, I want to say, one video every 6 weeks on his main channel, but each video he's doing now over time, it's not like it happened overnight, he's getting like 200 to 250 million views. The guy is doing almost 1 billion views in every video that he's, 250 million views in every single video that he's doing. And that's freaking nuts. So if you want to get more views, then yes, quality over quantity is for sure going to do that. And I guess one last bonus point that I will make for this as well is that quality breeds creativity, and creativity breeds uniqueness, and uniqueness produces better results. So one of the big themes that we talk about with content in general, and what I preach on for how to grow on social media, is you have to do something that is different, right? Because you're competing with so many people every single day who are in the same categories as you, who are posting the same types of content. And your job is you are fighting for the attention, okay? No one cares about you. They do not give a rat's behind about what you have to say unless it benefits them. And so when it comes to standing out and being that black sheep in content, it has to, and it always boils down to uniqueness. And that uniqueness can either be broken down into what you teach and how you teach it. So like what you teach, I guess, for its own. Like if you were someone like a Andrew Huberman, where what you teach is so unique because it's so in depth with knowledge, it's so rich with information that makes you stand out because, man, this guy really knows his stuff. It could also be how you teach it. So think of a Mark Rober. So Mark Rober is someone who does like science and engineering content, and he used to be a NASA engineer and he worked with Apple. Like this guy has changed the way that you think about learning science, and he makes it a really fun experience. And so because of that, he stands out like a black sheep in the content world because he puts so much time and effort into each video, but he does it in a really unique way that helps him stand out. And it doesn't always have to be long form. It doesn't have to be super crazy, but it's asking that question of, if I'm going to do this stuff, are people already doing this? And if they are, then you're commoditizing yourself. You can say that you're unique in your own way and that people can follow you for your takes on things, and that's fine, but you just have to show your true colors and be authentic to who you are, not just reading scripts and pretending to be like everybody else. You need to be authentic to who you are if you're going to make the case that you are the unique selling proposition for someone to want to go and follow you versus someone else who does the exact same material. If not that, then you have to ask yourself, what am I going to do differently to teach this material or share this material or exemplify this material or any of those things in order to stand out from the rest of the people that are here? And you can use you as the example with some of your experiences or the lessons you've learned or with the mistakes you've made and those kind of things. And that's great. But again, the question always still stems down to how unique can you be in this space? And so the benefit of quality is that when you focus on that and you spend way more time thinking about it, then you can focus on coming up with strategies that are unique to you in your space that help you stand out from everybody else that's creating content. Otherwise, what happens is you create the same stuff that other people are doing and you're battling for a unique hook that's just going to happen to land that people want. But then when it comes to people following you or really becoming a fan of what you do, it's going to be hard because they're commoditizing you to everybody else that already exists in your industry. And right now, for most of us, if we're talking about founders and we're business owners, like it's always going to be like we're living in the shadow of someone like an Alex Hormozi or Grant Cardone or Jesse Eisenberg. I think that's how you say his last name, Jesse Heights Eisenberg. It almost sounded like that's like some cartoon character from some TV show, and I could be so wrong. Or Jesse Eisenberg, I think, is the actor. But Jesse Eitzler, I think, is the guy that I'm thinking of. He's a really big founder as well. The name is slipping. Sorry about that, folks. But in general, like we're always going to feel like we're going to live in the shadows of these other big giants in the founder space because these guys just have so much experience and they're so charismatic and they're so funny and they have so much knowledge and value and resources and so many of those things. And so the question becomes, how can you stand out in the space and be in your own lane? Because when you are in your own lane, I heard this quote the other day. I'm pretty sure I'm probably going to butcher this. When you are in your own lane, like no one's slowing you down. Or it's hard to be stopped or obstructed when you exist in your own lane or you're driving in your own lane. I can't remember it. You go find it. You tell me it. You send me a message. Correct me on that, but you get the gist of it, okay? All right, so let's talk about a couple of the cons real quick, and we're going to move to the quantity side of things. So the cons is that this is all assuming that you know how and what makes a quality video in the first place, right? Because the problem most of us have is that we go and create content and we go, I love this content. This content is so good. It is so good. People are going to love this. They're going to share this. They're going to send this to their friends. It's like, okay, that's awesome. And then you go and post it and it gets like 300 views and you go, what the heck? Like, I thought this was so amazing. Like, everyone laughed at it that I showed. And the problem is that you probably showed it to people who are biased, who understand context about that relationship or that person, to where that makes that funny. You know, if someone does something funny who is typically not a funny person or a very quiet person, you might think it's hilarious, but to a stranger, they're like, I don't know who this guy is. This makes no sense to me, right? So when we assume that we know what quality is, that is I want to say it's kind of like I don't know what the term is for what I want to say on this, but that's kind of like the problem that most of us face as creators is that we think we know quality when we don't. And so we keep doing the same things over and over again and we think that it's awesome and it's not. And that was a problem and a trap that I fell into for years when I was doing content with my other company. Is I was like, dude, this content's amazing. This content's so good. Why are people not sharing this stuff? And I had to come to the realization. I'm like, oh, I don't think I understand what quality is. And here's a perfect example of that I hope that this actually resonates with a lot of you, is that there's a platform that is out right now, this AI service tool called Opus.ai. And it's awesome. It seems great. And what it does is you submit your long form content into it and it goes and chops it up for you. And it basically makes little shorts that all you have to do is hit download and then you can go post it on social media. So their whole thing is like, send in a clip and you can have 20, 25 pieces of content done in like an hour. And then you have your content for the month done in 1 hour. And people are like, dude, that is a really good value offer. Like, that is something that I want to do because I want to save time in that stuff. And that was actually what made me want to start this agency or this firm about a year ago. Is I was like, dude, AI is getting great. It's making these clips. I can go do this for, originally it was for churches, but I could expand and I can do this for so many different people. And all they got to do is just upload their long form and then they just post it, or I post it for them, and it's easy. And then I started paying a lot of money to be in some groups and coaching that started to explain what quality was. And it basically like took that idea and it crumpled it up like a piece of paper and threw it in the trash, then lit the trash on fire, and then threw that trash of fire into another dumpster fire. Because there's so much more when it comes to quality content than we realize if we haven't spent the time to research and invest into understanding what makes stuff better. And so when we're assuming that we know what quality is and we spend so much time on one video per week, and that one video gets only like 300 to 500 likes, then you're like, or I'm sorry, not even likes, views. You're like, if you got 300 likes, you'd be like, dude, that's freaking awesome. If you're getting 300 views, you're probably getting like 10 likes. You're like, dude, I'm spending so much time on this quality content, quote quality, and it's not paying off for me as well. And so then that can be a really, really challenging place for you to be in, where it's very frustrating and you have no idea how to make things better. Another analogy is it's like cooking, okay? You still need to know how to make a kick-ass meal, even if it is only once a week, right? Just because you decide to only make one meal a week does not automatically equal that meal is going to be the best meal of your week, because you still need to understand how to cook a good meal and what it takes to buy the right ingredients and to put the right things together and to, put the right ingredients into the saucepan or whatever it is. And you still have to understand what makes food great and how to cook it in order for that to even work. So you cannot assume that you understand good quality content if you haven't already done your research. And the last thing that I would say is that it can take a long time to get to the data that you need in order to know what works for you. So one of the big strategies in general for all content, and this is kind of like a universal across the board when I've gone to all these different courses and stuff, this is kind of like where everyone agrees on the same page with, and then they get down to the methodology and kind of separate things out. But basically what you're doing is all you're trying to do is just post and post and post, figure out what works for your audience and for your niche and for your content style and for your preferences and all those things. And you just need to test. You need to put out as much as you can and then take that data, be informed by that data, innovate and adapt off of that data, and then continue to iterate and make more content as you improve upon it. And then once you find something that works, you scale it. It's no different than trying to build a business, right? Or find an investment to some degree, right? Like you want to spend enough time and get enough data points to make a decision on like, okay, this is actually working. Let's pour fuel on the fire. Actually, I think the best analogy for this is ads, right? If you were going to go and start doing ads for your company, you're not just going to go put a bunch out and spend a ton of money on all of them and just kind of let them sit and be like, oh, I hope this works, right? Like if you're doing it right, you're looking at each of your ads that you're doing, each campaign that you have and all the subsets and looking at which ones are the highest performers. And then you're stopping the ones that aren't working. And then you're putting fuel on the fire on the ones that are. And that's the same thing with social media. You need data points to do that. And with quality, and you're only focused on one video a week, that means that of the year, you're probably only doing 52 videos. And on the other side, if you're doing quantity and you have 7 videos a week, and you do that for 52 weeks of the year, you have 364 pieces of content that you can then use as data to then inform yourself on what to do better. And so the game of data is very relevant for the game of social media. And if you don't have enough data points, it can just take longer. So if you truly want to go that route, then you just have to spend more time being patient and looking really deep into each of the ideas that you come up with and saying, what can I do better about this? And doing a lot of feedback and research and analysis to come to that conclusion so that you know what to do better next time. But the problem is that if you're not making great quality content to begin with, it's kind of like fixing the tables on the Titanic as it's heading towards the iceberg. There's a phrase like that where like you're focusing on solving the wrong problems. You're heading for the iceberg anyways. Like the content that you're doing sucks anyways. The style of what you're trying to do sucks anyways. Whatever it is, like you need a complete reset. So instead of you thinking, oh, I got to change this little nuance or this little thing, it's like, no, just try a different idea altogether. And that's where having so many different ideas to come up with and being able to execute on them is where it's very beneficial for you and your strategy, but that just takes more time. All right, so that's all the pros and cons that I would give for quality. Let's go ahead and jump over to the pros and All right, so that was everything for you on the pros and cons of quality. Let's go ahead and jump down to the pros and cons of quantity now. Okay, so just like we started off with a quote on the last one, let's go ahead and start with a quote this time. And this one's a very simple quote, and it comes from the great Alex Hormozi himself. He says, volume negates luck. VNL. If you can remember that, that'll stick with you forever. Volume negates luck, okay? The more you can produce, the higher chances you have of winning. This is no different than if you're thinking about the lottery and thinking about, what you're able to spend at a gas station if you're really feeling like you're lucky and you're going to win, instead of spending all of your money on one specific type of scratch off or scratch it. I didn't know which term you use. I'm not a gambler. Whichever one you spend more time investing your quote money into, and you believe that that's going to work, like quality, then you're lowering your chances for actually winning. But if you just put more money into a bunch of different ones and you diversify, then eventually you're going to win something. Now, in the world of social media, the more time you put into more content, in the adverse way of what it looks like to do that with a lottery ticket is that when you find a winning idea, you can pour fuel on the fire for that. So instead of like, oh yeah, I won some money with the lottery, this one is, oh, I found a winning piece of content. Let's iterate on more of that, and then I can win even more. You can't just be like, oh, I won this one type of lottery ticket. It's a rigged system, but not with social media. Fortunately, we get that a better way. So the more volume you can put out, the better chance you have of winning. This also ties into the same idea that with more volume is more touch points, which then also equals more experience, which then also equals better output over time. This also implies that you are being attentive and intentional about the content you're creating and still trying to iterate and reiterate when you're creating more content, not just spending one time a month going to making content and then just looking away and not thinking about it and then coming back a month later and then just doing more of the same thing. You still want to be analyzing and looking at the data regardless, but the question becomes, we have more data to look at, so we have more questions to ask about what messages or what things are working for us. Okay. So that's a big pro, is that when you have more volume out there, not only are you getting more data points to research, but you yourself are getting more experience. You're getting more comfortable with doing these 60-second short pieces of content or these 15-second pieces or whatever it is. And the more times you do something, the easier it becomes to do it. For instance, this podcast, I'm probably going to look back and be like, man, I sucked on this first episode. This thing was garbage. But I'm going to look back on that in like 50 episodes and be like, hey, but I wouldn't get to where I am today if it weren't for the fact that I started here now. And so for you, with your content and getting better at it and being more involved on the day-to-day when you can about how to iterate and improve and do better and come up with better ideas for yourself and then get in front of the camera, then you can start to grow faster when it comes to the touch points and experiences than if you didn't do that with just one piece a week. It's also really good to understand that you won't know what works until it works. And again, whether we're doing one video a week or 7 videos a week, it's going to take time. Now, the benefit that I would say about quantity is that when you figure out your style, so when you're first starting off, it's probably going to be a lot more intense on the making so many different ideas and different strategies or whatever to post, things that you like. It's probably going to take more time, but once you figure out like your thing, or you figure out which one you like to do the most, it actually becomes really easy to batch that content. Now, there are pros and cons to batching, and I'll save that for a different episode. But in general, if you can figure out a really good system that's pretty foolproof on being able to make content consistently in a concentrated amount of time, then you're able to systemize that process and then eventually scale that process. And that's exactly what we did with our firm, is that we figured out a way to create content with our clients in only about 3 hours a month with them, so that when we get in, we have all the ideas prepped, we hit the record button, we record content for 3 hours, and then we have content for over a month with them. And that is a huge benefit to us and to the client, because then we now have a system that we can then scale and operate better with, so that when we make more content, we know what we're doing. But if you are only doing one piece of content a week, it's really hard for you to figure out a rhythm or a system that you can repeat over and over again until you have the data points to do that. And so that pro of having more content and more volume allows you to test more things out there. Another one that I would say too is, and I didn't even have this written down, but we were talking about it, is that let's say that we're making that case of that 1,000,000 views versus the 10,000 every single day. Okay, well, those 10,000 people that are seeing that every single day are probably pretty close to the same people, right? I mean, the algorithm can still distribute it to non-followers in the hopes that it's still consistently growing for you. And if you have a base of 10,000 views per video in this algorithm, that's freaking awesome. You probably have at least, I want to say 50 to 100,000 followers if you're doing that. But in general, if you're getting less views, but you're consistent with those, and let's say you're doing a high ticket offer, then it's much easier for you to nurture those leads, or to set up lead magnets, or to push them towards some platform that's your website or some community or whatever else it is. It's so much better quality for you, because the people that are coming through that are interested in this stuff, those are the people that you're actually trying to reach, right? Virality is vanity unless it's done with the right the right mindset and the right strategy, because just going viral doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get tons of business, because going viral can mean you go viral for the wrong reasons, or you reach the wrong crowd of people that's not like relevant to your content at all. So it's important that you understand that even if you're getting less views, but you have more volume, not only are you getting more test points, data points, more experience and touch points, but you're also potentially getting the right people to find your content that are interested in what you have to say. And so that's where the patience still comes into play with making your content, because you know that over time, as you slowly build an audience of people who love what you teach and what you talk about, then eventually you have that huge fan base of people that are more of the qualified leads for what you're trying to offer as a service than just reaching the broad masses about anything and everything. The last thing that I would say, and this is the biggest point of all, is that quality is subjective. I'm going to say that one more time, because that's the main point I want you to learn from this and this entire podcast episode, is that quality is subjective. Okay. What is quality to a beginner, right? Like, let's say you make a piece of content and you're a business coach and you're talking about starting your first business. That content for a beginner who is a first-time entrepreneur, has never done something before, might be useless information or a waste of time to someone who's already started multiple businesses. The question becomes, who are you trying to reach? What is your long-term goal with your socials and what you want to achieve with them? And what kind of content is deemed as quality to your audience? Because at the end of the day, we might believe that we know what is quality, and I might make a case for there's certain situations where the content that you teach should be a reflection of what you believe is quality because of what you've learned in your life or what you believe has added value to your life. But in general, the question should always be, what is valuable to the viewer? What do they want? What do they want to learn? And if you don't know who your audience is, or your ideal avatar, or your ICP, or whatever term you want to use, the person who's watching your content that you want watching your content, you have to ask yourself, what is quality to them? Because to them, it might be, dude, I don't need the fluff. I don't need the crazy animations. I don't need that kind of stuff. I just need you giving me the information, facts, and those things straight. Like, think about Hormozi. Hormozi just sits in front of the camera and he just talks about very high level, valuable content that's very tactical. He has frameworks. He has examples. He always makes it easy for us to understand, but he's not doing crazy edits. He's not doing things all over the place. Like, he might go walk around and be in a different room for some of the content that he does. He might be on his plane, or he might be in his office, or he might be in his, studio space, whatever it is. And those things are great, but in general, what people care about is the material that he's talking about. And so if that's the case, then that's what people care about. So when we say this term quality all the time and we're throwing this thing around, quality is a subjective term. And so we have to first understand what is quality to them in order for us to then dictate the kind of content that we're going to create for them. All right, so those are some of the pros. And I think I did write one example in here. What did I say right here? I said the more knowledge and experience you have, the less you need to research and the more you just chat. So the idea that I gave here was about Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you know who Jordan Peterson is, but Jordan is a psychologist. He grew up, I want to say, in Canada. I don't know if he grew up in Canada, but he used to teach in Canada. And now I think he's a part of the Daily Wire. He can be a controversial figure for some. But in general, like he's out here bold and talking about what he talks about, but he is so smart and he is so convicted about what he talks about that he can get in front of a camera and have anyone ask him questions. And the things that he spews out is just incredible. It is so intelligent. It is so relatable. It is so smart. And it is so eye-opening because it changes our perspective on certain elements of life. And we wouldn't otherwise know that other than the fact that Jordan just already lived those experiences and has been teaching that for a really long time. And so when it comes to the idea of quality, the more experience you have and the more reps you have in what you do, the less time you even need to spend doing research. You can just get in front of a camera and record. The problem is that for a lot of us that are early on, like me, that's pretty early into my business career and into the social content sphere as far as compared to people that have been doing this for a decade plus. I still need to do lots of research, and there's still a lot of time that I need to put into things that I do. But you can get Jordan Peterson, who's like, I don't need to prep anything. I can get in front of a camera and I can talk about anything because I've done lectures for 10 years, because I have been a part of, live events and interviews for the last 20 years, whatever it is. And so that's where the quality and what it's considered quality is even easier for those of you, which is most of my audience, hopefully, is those that are 7, 8, and 9 figure founders, where you have the reps, you have the experience, you have the undeniable stack of proof in your favor. So when you get in front of a camera, you could talk about things that you just know because you've already lived those experiences. But if I'm talking to someone who's brand new into a space and they haven't been in it for very long, it's a much more challenging approach for them because that volume becomes a burden for them because there's so much time that is spent doing research instead of just hitting the record button. So that's the difference, is that you're probably in the camp where it makes sense to do quantity over quality because you already have lived the quality and it's easy for you to regurgitate or talk about some of these things you've already experienced, or talk about a certain subject that you're pretty well versed in, instead of having to go and do the research that other people have to do. All right, so those are a lot of the pros for quantity, and then let's talk about the cons real quick. So some of the cons is it is more time consuming. So this is this is under the impression, or this is implying that the time that is spent goes back to what I was just saying, is that you're doing a ton of time with research because you have to research for so many more pieces of content. You got to hit the record and you got to do that on multiple days. You have to do all the editing yourself. This is all assuming that you don't have a team on your side. And if that's the case, then yes, it's going to take you more time because you have to edit the videos, you got to record the videos, you got to hit publish on the things, you got to write down all your ideas. There's a lot of time that goes into that. Now, while I have a team that does a lot of my stuff, I'm still doing all of the ideas for my own personal brand and my content. I'm still the one that's coming up with ideas for King's Media stuff and doing King's Media social stuff. So there's a lot of time that I'm spending doing things that is not things that my team is doing that's still very, very time consuming. So yes, it's going to take more of your time, but the case that I'm going to make is that that's a good thing, that it should take more time, because the more reps you get with this, the easier it becomes for you, the more you understand the space. And just like a founder for yourself and your business, you probably have your toes dipped in every single division of your business. And even though you might not be an expert, you still have a pretty good grasp on them, so that in the case that someone leaves and you have to fill that spot, you can at least take over while you're trying to put out that fire and find someone to replace you, so that things don't burn to the ground. You are probably well-versed in a lot of things in your business. Adding social content and marketing is probably an extremely beneficial thing for you to focus on. You just have to get over any pride that might exist that says, well, I'm too big for this. Oh, I already have such a successful business. I don't want to start an account with only like 3 followers or whatever it is, or I don't want to have to go learn another thing. Like if you're thinking that way, then it usually stems from some sort of pride, and I want to challenge you to overcome that. The next is, I would say that without any effort to intentionally grow and learn through the quality, or through the quantity that you're creating, you're just going to continue making crappy content forever. And that's kind of a no-brainer. You just need to spend more time being intentional with looking at the data, doing the research, and making those informed decisions when you're doing more content, instead of just assuming that your content is great, getting in front of the camera, hitting record, and then being like, oh, I don't understand. That's the algorithm. They don't like my stuff. It's just not pushing my stuff out. My content is so high quality. I just don't understand. And we'll save that discussion for how to execute on a different podcast episode. But I want you to just know that there's no excuse for putting out crappy quality content if you're not doing the research and you're making these informed decisions for yourself. Another con is that it could be more money. So as you're starting to do this, you might decide that you want to replace yourself by having a team manage the editing, the strategy, the ideas, the video recording, the audio, sound design, all that kind of stuff. And that means that you have to be spending more money to replace yourself or expand on your team. And if you're someone who's a 7, 8, or 9-figure founder, then for you, it might not be, the biggest dent in your wallet to invest in this kind of stuff. But of course, it becomes another expense that you are then in charge of for whatever your ultimate goal is when it comes to social media and what you're trying to accomplish. But again, it is going to cost you more money, and that is still a con. A bigger investment of time. So the last one here is, again, like, unless you're using a specific system like we've created, which, by the way, if you haven't already looked and downloaded our Smart Sessions playbook for founders, go ahead and just click the link that I'll have down below in the show notes for this and download that, because I just walked through everything about how you can start doing Smart Sessions yourself for your content. So you only have to record for 3 hours a month. And then the editing is going to, of course, be an additional time that you have to spend doing it. But if you can go hire an editor, then maybe I will eventually put out a little PDF or a little mini course for you guys on how to go find the right editor for your team, so that you can get that going for you as well. So in general, the pros and cons of quantity, I think that the case that I'm going to make for the end of this between quality or quantity is that I am going to be a big advocate for quantity. Now, the audience that I'm specifically talking to are to founders who have probably ran, 7, 8, and 9-figure successful businesses. And for you, the investment side of things, you don't see it as an expense, you see this as an investment. And so whether you work with a team like me or you go and invest in your own team, you see it as an investment. And so if you can can find the right team and you understand the right strategy and you start putting the time and effort into it and you start investing into something like this, then the outsized returns that you get for this, for your business or for your personal brand or for anything else you want to do, starts to skyrocket. And so you can create a system, you can still make quality, because again, quality is subjective. It is not just a black and white, this is quality, this is not quality. You have to know your audience. And for most of you that are experienced in what you do, you're already either a master of your field and industry, which you are teaching on, that you want to share more about, that is directly tied to your services or to your brand, or you are an expert when it comes to something like business in general, and you want to start a new venture and you want to become a thought leader in the space, you want to be an industry leader. And so the material that you're teaching and sharing on is adding that to it. Now, you might not have as many viral views because you're still testing content and you're putting out more ideas and testing messaging. But if you're consistent and you are patient, then you will have more data points faster to make better informed decisions on how you can scale the things that are working. So my winner in this match, in this boxing match of Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, because they apparently are so equal that they couldn't knock each other out. Poor guy. Mike Tyson. My case is going to be for that of quantity. Okay. So this is what we do with all of our clients. This is the system that we've designed and developed. And that's what I want you to focus on, is figure out a way where you can get more quantity out there, figure out a system, use something like our smart sessions, get more content out there, test more data points, test messaging, find ideas that have already proven and gone viral, add it into your strategy and content base of what you're going to create, and then just start scaling what is working. So don't be so stressed on quality. I would still highly encourage you to focus and invest on like learning more about quality and what makes good content and understanding your audience and their pain points and that kind of stuff. But don't be so caught up on the quality game that you're only putting out one video a week, when the more reps you're going to get with content and the more ideas you come up with and the things that you test, you're going to find the winners faster, and then you can scale so much faster. Okay. But if you are someone who is extremely strapped for time and you can't do anything else, I would still recommend the quantity, but just take the sacrifice on things like the video production quality. So for example, go and check out this guy. His name is Jefferson Fisher, I believe. And he is, I want to say he's a lawyer, but he does content that is specifically around helping people with like conflict negotiation and how to get the things they want in life through just communication in general. And all he does is he just flips his phone up in the car and he just records the video in his car, and that is it. He adds captions, he has little cuts when he finishes a thought, and that is literally it. But you don't need to have this fancy recording. You don't have to have the production gear set. You don't have to have that stuff if you truly want to just go start getting reach and attention and awareness without feeling like it has to be production level. But if you do care about production and the visuals and how that looks, then of course, find yourself a team, or if you really want to do it yourself, go and invest in learning how to set up the production, get the camera equipment, learn all the aspects of the process, and then start hitting record and sacrificing and compromising for more time on this so that you can start to see the compounding effect of what happens when you start to build your personal brand on social media. All right, so that's everything that I got for you on this one. I hope that that was valuable and helpful for you when it comes to your strategy and what you want to do. If you have more questions, for sure hit me up in my DMs on social media, Kings Media Co. on Instagram, or you can find us on YouTube under Kings Media. Would love to hear your feedback and your thoughts on these things, your questions, your challenges, all that kind of stuff. I want to help you guys as much as possible. So let me know if there's anything else that I can do for you around this subject of quality versus quantity. And if not, then I will happily see you guys in the next episode. And as always, keep crushing with your socials. Let's get this bread.